name is Richie Kohler, and I've been called a deep sea detective, I've been called a shadow divers, but I'm just a kid from Brooklyn who got lucky. That's the way I see myself. And I would dive on the weekend. It was my passion, it was my hobby. And then one day we stumbled on this 50-year-old sea mystery. It was like, for a diver, winning the lottery. I mean, you go to bed at night dreaming about finding a virgin shipwreck. And that's what happened. We found one. Most people want me to tell them, well, which U-boat was it? Well, I encourage these people to either watch Hitler's Lost Sub, which is the 2-hour documentary put out by Nova, or to read the book Shadow Divers, because it really is a wonderful mystery. And that's the story. The story for John and Richie was one of technical diving. It was one of an unknown German U-boat with her crew. But the bigger story, the story behind the book Shadow Divers and the story behind Hitler's Lost Sub, is this complex mystery where two mooks from New Jersey, two regular guys, set out on a 6-year trek doing archival research, original research, traveling to Washington, D.C., traveling to Germany, traveling to London, to try and put all the pieces together, to try and figure out how this World War II submarine wound up off New Jersey, and no one knew how. No one knew what happened to them. They just sailed off in the fog of war. And I have to tell you, in the beginning, I was a bit of a pirate. All I really wanted was a dish with the eagle and swastika. I wanted a piece of World War II history to bring home and put on my mantle. But something happened diving this wreck. You see, at that point I had been diving 20 years, and although I had been diving shipwrecks up and down the east coast of the United States, I had never seen human remains. But on this U-boat, the crew is still aboard. And inside this steel tube, the water is stagnant, and the crew is still there, literally just bones, but in their uniform. And this has an effect on a person. You have to be callous not to be touched by this. So I felt a sense of obligation that I had to be the guy to figure out who these men were and go to their families and say, your son, your father, your brother has been found. People realize that 60 years later, they know that these people didn't come home. We weren't going to tell them something that they knew. They knew they were dead. But what they didn't know was how they died and where they died, and that the people that found them cared about them. And to me, that was the most important thing about this particular wreck. By the time that we stumbled onto this German U-boat in 230 feet, I had already been diving for 5 years, something that's been referred to as the Mount Everest of wreck diving, the Andrea Doria. Now, the Andrea Doria was a passenger liner that had a collision with a Swedish merchant vessel called the Stockholm, right off Nantucket Island. 52 people went down with the Andrea Doria. She was the pride of the Italia fleet, and was left there, abandoned. She's quite literally the abandoned shipwreck, until divers started to visit her. And by going down to the Andrea Doria, which is in 250 feet, it was my first exposure to what we can consider a Hollywood shipwreck. One that you could swim through doorways, go down the halls, down the staircase, go into a room and open a drawer. Now, the Andrea Doria is a very dangerous dive. Since divers have been visiting her, I believe right now the count is something like 16 people, 16 men have died inside it. This is crazy. Why are you doing this? There's no gold. There is no best-selling book. Why do you do this? Why do people ski between the trees and go off the rocks? It's because it's something they feel they have to do. That's why I do it.